Hello, this is Jane Eisner, Editor-in-Chief of the Jewish Daily Forward. It's Monday, June 4th, and I'm here with our reporter Natan Goodman and Janet Napalitano. She's the Secretary of the Department of Homeland Security, and she's paid a visit to our office to talk about the department's efforts to safeguard the Jewish community in America and relationships with Israel. You just returned from Israel. Could you tell us about the trip and what you accomplished there that the Jewish community in the United States should know about?
Well, I had a number of really good meetings. One of the things we were announcing was the beginning of a program called Global Entry with Israel. This is a program basically to pre-clear travelers from Israel into immigration and customs through the United States. And so we're beginning that system now. But we were also talking more generally about things like border protection. Obviously, Department of Homeland Security, we have that responsibility for the United States. It's a big issue in Israel. So that was another topic that we discussed.
So why the need for this global entry program?
What we're trying to do is to facilitate travelers to the United States and try to take some pressure off of the lines.
Let's look at the inevitable, the 800-pound gorilla in the room. How about let's scrutinize young Middle Eastern men?
We've got to
Let's stop this. What happens on El Al Airlines, the airline run and operated by the State of Israel, if a Palestinian tries to board that flight? You think he goes through an extra degree of security? Let's do that with Muslims. Let's do that with anybody named Abdul or Mohammed or Ahmed. Let's take them and put them in a room and make sure they don't have explosives sewn into their underwear.
That's what
I think we ought to do what El Al Airlines does. Ask anybody who knows El Al what they do with Palestinians who attempt to board El Al. We should take anybody who's a known Muslim and put them in a separate line. Call it a VIP line.
I think anyone who's come back from a trip and waited at JFK, for example, knows that you can finish a long flight and then all of a sudden you've got an hour plus, maybe even two, in lines. Well, one of the ways to deal with that is to have people who have voluntarily given us information, had an interview, we have their fingerprints, and be able to swipe their passport and them through at kiosks so they don't have to wait in the longer lines.
Are you going to do this with a lot of different countries?
We are beginning to open it up in several other countries. We just opened it in the Netherlands, for example, so yes. But Israel was the first country that we did it where we didn't also insist on reciprocity for U.S. visitors. I think we'll get there, but we wanted to go ahead and begin the Israel to U.S.
And why treat Israel differently?
Well, we have a special friendship with Israel.
Americans have been bombarded for so long with the idea that a special relationship with Israel is a good thing that it has been accepted as a dire necessity, as a bulwark between them and the spectre of rampant worldwide terrorism. But there are many people, and I am one of them, who maintain that America's long-term tunnel vision support for the ambitions of Zionist apartheid Israel is the root cause of a great deal of the unrest and distrust that we see in the world today. So why would an assembly of over 500 politicians, who are, figuratively speaking, at each other's throats for a good deal of the time, all rise together 29 times to applaud the Prime Minister of a nation that has recently used white phosphorus against a caged civilian population during Operation Cast Lead, and whose military ruthlessly gunned down 9 people on the Mavi Marmara, a ship of the Gaza Freedom Flotilla bringing humanitarian aid to those beleaguered people?
It's a strong partnership. President Obama is very committed to that relationship, and we are looking for ways to express that commitment.
Last year, The Forward published a major story examining how Department of Homeland Security grants to nonprofits were largely going to those in the Jewish community, and that this was not an accident, that in fact a lot of the way the law and the regulations were written favored Jewish institutions. Do you think that that is right, that a federal program seems, at least in consequence, if not in intention, to be targeting or favoring one group?
Well, I think the way I look at it somewhat differently. I think it's focused on, these grants are focused on risk mitigation, prevention. Where can that best be done? What community organizations are best situated to do it? And I think that the way they've been distributed, that goes out through a very heavily peer-reviewed process of people who do this as a profession, and is trying to get the dollars where they believe they will do the highest and best use. So the fact that it ends up going to many Jewish organizations doesn't in and of itself bother me.
And do you think the money is being well spent? Do you have evidence for that?
Well, I would usually get evidence of the other way. I would get evidence if it's being misspent, and I have no such evidence.
One last question. How would you assess the threat to the Jewish community in America now?
I would assess that today we have no specific, credible threat of any type of imminent attack.
We begin tonight with a surprising development in the story of those swastikas painted on the door of a student at George Washington University. Good evening, I'm Doreen Gensler.
And I'm Jim Vance. Turns out the student was painting the hateful symbols herself. Jackie Benson is at the university now with more on this. Jackie?
Jim, these incidents, and there were several of them, caused a lot of concern here on the GW campus. Now, the FBI was called in to assist after swastikas kept appearing on a message board, similar to a dry erase board, on the door of a female student, she is Jewish, who lived in Mitchell Hall. Now the university confirms that a hidden camera placed in the hallway confirmed the student who was the apparent victim did it herself. News 4 spoke to that young woman who asked not to be identified shortly after the hate-filled symbols began appearing on her door. Here's what she had to say at that time.
Who does such a thing?
I wish I knew. I wish I had any clue who this was, but university police, my house proctor, administrators, nobody can think of a motive of somebody who hates me that much.
Through the use of hidden cameras, interviews, and increased police patrols, we have concluded, and through a final interview today, investigators have concluded that the student who reported the incidents is responsible for the incidents.
Now, the university has confirmed that the student, who is a freshman, has admitted responsibility for the swastikas in Mitchell Hall. She faces student judicial action, and she could face possible criminal charges. But I get the feeling here at this point that the university just wants to see her get some help. This has been a very troubling incident for everyone here. Jim, back to you.